Yeah, and then just drop me a message. I'll send this to you afterwards.
Thank you.
Cool. Just real quick, are you happy to share the slides with people after the event, or just a secret one-off?
No, I can share them, but what I would love for them to do is send me, if they could subscribe to the website, so that I, from an email point of view, if that would be all right, and then I will send them the slides directly then, if that would be okay. Yeah,
sounds fine to me. So I've got everyone's email address. I've emailed everyone here today. So if you have any questions and want to get in touch with me regarding either this recording, which will be available on YouTube afterwards, and also have access to Nicole's slides, then feel free to drop me a message. Lost my participants box here. There we go. Let that person in. Okay, great. We've got a good turnout so far. So for everyone, we'll just be monitoring the conversation through the chat box. If you'd like to start by telling us who you are, what your brand is, and where you're from, then that would be great. Great to see where everyone's coming in from today. And if you're new to the Accelerator as well, we have quite a few exciting upcoming events. And yeah, this is actually our first webinar of the year. So thank you.
Right, okay, shall I kick off then, Amanda? Shall I start? Or
yeah, no, actually, I've got quite a few people still joining for the moment. So if you could give it 2 more minutes, I'll keep yammering on until we're good to go. Just keeping an eye on the waiting room here. But for anyone who hasn't attended any of our webinars before, I am Amanda. I am the Events and Partnerships Manager for Loan Design Club, and I'm also overseeing the LDC Accelerator, which is a platform to support brands and give them all the information that they need to grow as successful businesses. So we have a couple of exciting things coming up. Do check out our State of Retail talk if you haven't signed up already, or just drop us a message if there's any content that you're on the lookout for.
Anyone if anyone wants to turn on their camera, I'd love to see them. But if you don't feel comfortable with it, I understand. But it's nice to see faces rather than black boxes. But if you don't want to, don't worry. But it would be great to see some faces, but it's up to you. Sorry, Amanda, to interrupt you.
No, please. This is your show. I'm merely just introducing you. But yeah, so for anyone, hi Olga.
Hi Olga.
Waving there. Good to see you. Yeah, so if you missed it at the beginning, Nicole's just gonna take over in a second, but do feel free to drop in any of your questions throughout, and we'll come to answering them at the end, unless
faces, people instead of black boxes.
Yeah, just drop your questions in the chat box. If you don't want to read it out at the end, I'm happy to read it out for everyone. And yeah, I think that's it.
Maybe we just do a reminder about questions, Amanda, then, because there's quite a few people have joined. Type your questions as you think about them, if there's some that are really pertaining to what I'm talking about that time, I'll cover it at that moment. If not, we'll wait until the end and we'll go through the questions. And Amanda's going to keep an eye on the chat. So if there's quite a few that come up that are running along the same theme, then we'll make sure that we get to those. And if there's anything that I haven't had a chance to cover, just direct message me on Instagram, or you can drop me an email. I'll give you the details as we're going through the session. Okay. Yeah. All right then. Right. So I'll start sharing then. Can you see that? The first phrase of the Zoom, of all Zoom calls, is "Can you see me? Can you hear me?" Right. Okay. So, right, is it moving? There we go. Right. Okay. So thank you very much for joining Amanda and I. And today I'm going to talk to you about how to pitch your products to retail buyers. So give you some tips and tools of the trade from an extra confidence and extra knowledge when you're approaching retail. Let's see. So a little bit before I go on, a little bit about me. My name is Nicole Higgins and I have set up a business. I'm the buyer and retail coach. I've got 18 years experience working as a buyer. So I've worked in places like Debenhams, Marks and Spencer's, Primark, and most recently head of buying on footwear and accessories at George. And I've worked across multiple product categories. So lingerie, health and beauty, homewares, nightwear, footwear and accessories. So very broad spectrum of product. And what I do now is I now work with entrepreneurs, small businesses and startups, middle-sized brands, and then special projects for bigger brands as well, and to basically help them start, grow, or scale their business at whatever stage that they are at. During my time, I've brought over 1,000 new products to market. I've sourced across 18 countries, and I have added about 40 million incremental sales on multi-product areas. So in terms of seeing people like yourselves that want to pitch to retailers and want to approach buyers, I've had a lot of experience the other side, so as the buyer, and having those meetings and people trying to contact me and get those meetings. So that's what today kind of will cover, really. And just an overview of, like I said, what today will cover. We know we're in COVID situations, and it's very different now to what it would have been this time last year. So I'll talk a little bit, a very small amount, about how has retail and the customer changed post-COVID, and looking at is working with retailers right for you, because it has changed, and I think you need to look at your business model to see if it's the right thing for you, or if you should be focusing on direct to consumer. What you need to do to prepare for your meetings, what the purpose of your meeting should be, the pain points that the buyers usually have, the presentation or kind of documents that you need to give them, to help promote your brand and your business while you're in the meetings, or to get those meetings, and then looking a little bit at the payments and costing side of things. Okay. So with retail at the moment, it's very uncertain. And as a brand and a retailer, you need to be creative, you need to be innovative and rethink your normal. So, just a quote there from Carla Buzazzi from WGSN, it is very much about rethinking your marketing messages, your routes to market, and your entire business plans, and also your product assortments and the reason that they're there. And you might now be, and based from a retail side of things, kind of give you some examples of when I was working at for George at Asda March last year, March up into, well, for the last kind of year up until October, and COVID hit, and it was a very different situation. It was right, what's on the water, what do we need, what's selling, what won't sell. We knew we wouldn't sell formal. We weren't really selling accessories. People weren't going out. We weren't really selling handbags. People weren't going anywhere. The things that we're selling were lingerie was selling because people were staying at home, wanted to be more comfortable. Athleisure was selling. Kids footwear, kids product was selling really well because they were working from home. They weren't in their uniforms. They needed, all their footwear and sliders, all that kind of product was selling. And, and selling much better than it would have done before. Garden wear was obviously through the gardening product and all that kind of thing was through the roof because people weren't going on holiday. So it's really thinking when a situation like this happens, how does it affect your brand? And what can your brand do to play into the situation that it's happening, or what do you need to do to either change or help yourself drive more business? And I don't know if you follow him, but there's a very good, really good, he's called the retail prophet called Doug Stevens, and he's compared COVID-19 to the commercial equivalent of a meteorite. And it really is, it's kind of come down. And you can see also as well, you've seen so many retailers that have closed, gone into administration, and it is very much the survival of the fittest with a lot of mergers and acquisitions and administrations. But it's also then there is opportunities within that, which I can come to later. But at the moment, you have a lot of varied demand, you have disrupted supply chains, you have pressure on logistics, and you have the switch in categories and customer interest. So before, you might have been used to selling, you know, I don't think anyone would have sold as much party wear this Christmas that they would have ever sold. You know, it would have been a category that everyone would have cancelled probably 95% of it, you know. And then this is just a slide from in BOF, Business of Fashion, and they spoke to fashion executives and what they felt now was the biggest challenge for the fashion industry. So obviously, physical retail and store footfall can change in consumer demand because it is in flux, and then the COVID-19 crisis as it is. But then the opportunity is the market share gain, because as some retailers are closing, there's an opportunity for other retailers to take some of that market. So Topshop, we know, is in the news at the moment. They're going to close some of their stores. There'll still be a presence, but that's an opportunity for another retailer to grow their market share, potentially grow their market share. Sustainability has become, it's pushed it a bit more in terms of the forefront of people's mind. So there's an opportunity there for people in the fashion industry. And then digital has, I think that they say, it's accelerated probably 3 years ahead of where it would have been if we didn't have COVID. And then looking at some of how some of the big retailers are changing, and this is something that Nike have been doing since 2017. They went from 30,000 retailer doors or accounts to 40 key partners. And they wanted to make sure that they had that great relationship, that they know the people that they were with, that was representing their brand, were spot on and were the ones that they wanted to be with. So I suppose just in terms of how you could relate that back to yourselves is potentially don't spread your brand too thin. You can still have an element of control, and partnering with people that you know have the same kind of values as you do as a brand, and treat their customers the way that you would treat them if you were selling directly to them. And with the way that they had done that and focusing on their direct consumer, they have reached their plan by 2019 in terms of from sales point of view, and they didn't expect to reach it until 2022. So I know that that's a big player, and I know that I'm going to talk to you about how to pitch to retailers, but it's to bear in mind as well those retailers that you partner with and that you want to be stocked at and work with. So in terms of, is retail right for you? What are your reasons for selling to retail? And make sure that you choose the right partners. So the pros, you get a much wider audience, you get greater engagement. The prestige, stocked in so-and-so, and you can increase your turnover. Some of the cons, you'll make less margin, potentially less control of stocks. Well, you would have less control of your stocks. You could face cancellations, and you may have increased pressure. So a lot of brands will have had orders cancelled by retailers because they were shut, because they physically could not take in their product and sell it. They would have expected to sell. You might have a retailer, they would say, right, okay, we would normally sell 1,000 units of your brand a month, and 60% of that would be in our bricks and mortar, and 40% of it will be online. I can take the 40% because I know I can still sell online, and actually I might take 50% instead, but there's still an element that I know I'll never sell, so I can't take that. So then you're left with that stock. So I think that it's very much while we're in flux, those are the kind of things for you to think about. I'm not being doom and gloom at all, but it's just to be mindful of those kind of things. Okay, so once you've decided who your ideal retailers are, make a list of who you want to approach and start watching they're doing as a business. So make sure you're following them on LinkedIn. Maybe follow, if you want to target the kind of key people that are in their company. So you can search on LinkedIn for the buyer of, let's say, soft furnishings in a brand. And you could follow them because they might post things that are related to the business. Follow the business itself. Make sure you're keeping up to date with current events, because when you do go to speak to them, you can use that as part of a link. So when you email them, it can be, oh, I really liked how you did so-and-so. I think my brand really fits what you're trying to do, or is very much aligned with your business values and what you're doing. And build that rapport with them, so you're kind of not going in cold as well. Comment on their posts on LinkedIn, comment on what the business is doing, and then in terms of how you get in touch with them, a lot of the time is people are listed on the company website. You might be able to get through to them from the from reception. I know Primark, when I was working at Primark, we would get calls from people, cold calls from people that are just calling up. And but LinkedIn would generally be where people would have found me and contacted me, and then emailed me through that. So if you're not savvy with how to use LinkedIn, there's a man called Nigel Cliff, and he runs a really good LinkedIn course about how to search, and I'm sure he gives away a lot of free articles as well in terms of when he writes. But you have to do a bit of digging, and it's a bit like Inspector Clouseau, but you can get to the right people and you can get to the right names. And even if they, you might be able to send them a direct message, they may not respond, but at least you have the name, and that's the person that you can ask for when you phone up or when you try, when you get in touch with the business. So it's about tailoring your correspondence. So I wouldn't do a one size fits all blind CC email out to everyone. It's, it's like I said, having that kind of hook in your email title. What are they doing that is relevant to your brand? What's the gap that you'll fill, that your product will fill? And then just make sure that the subject heading or the email catch their interest a little bit, how you're setting yourself up for success. So before you do contact them, do you have a website you're proud of, or an Instagram page that you're proud of that really represents what you're about? So no point saying that you're such and such if your website portrays you in a different way, or if your Instagram portrays you in a different way. So make sure that you are set up for success in those kind of things. And then at the moment, everything that we do is on Zoom. So think about, if you're going to have a virtual meeting, how are you going to have that? Where are you going to have that? Do you have the right technology? Do you have a good Wi-Fi? If not, can you go somewhere that does? I know these are small things, but you don't want to be on that meeting for it to be stopping and starting. And think about how you will, and we can talk about it a bit more because later on when we're talking about preparing for the meetings, but making sure that you've got good lighting if you're going to have the meetings online so they can see the product properly. And I would advise as well, Susie, that you would be sending samples in for them to see so that you can both discuss them at the same time. So if you've got a product, they have it in their hand as well. And then, if you are ready, then and you've got your list of who you want to approach, then I would start approaching, but making sure that you have got some of the following things really clear in your mind so that they're the right fit for you. So who is your target customer and who is their customer and how are they aligned? What are your brand values and what does your brand stand for? And be really clear in terms of what your product does and the problem that you're trying to solve. Be clear on your pricings and your costings. So what are your recommended retails and how does that sit within the competition and within their competition? So you might be the best value product that sells children's cardigans, but you have the design aesthetic of something that's much more expensive. So you're a great value product, but with a great design. And you might be the cheapest on the market, or you might be a sustainable brand and you are mid-priced and this is the gap that you fit in their roster of brands, because they might not have any sustainable children. If we could stick with the children's wear theme for a minute, they might not have any sustainable children's wear brands and you could be that brand. But it's also then, so knowing where your retail prices are, but then knowing what your costings are and what your own minimums are for them to order from you. So with costings, a retailer generally would be, so if you have something and your recommended retail is £10, they would want to probably buy that from you for £5. So then, you don't want to be making it for £5 and selling it to them for £5. You're not going to make any money. So, you would probably want to be something like £2.50, selling at £5 to them, and then they sell on at 10. So it's just making sure when you're looking at your own prices that you have enough in it for you to make the money that you need to make. And looking at your competition, who is your competition? Why are you better? Why are you different? And what is the problem that your product or brand will solve? So what is your unique selling point? imagery is really strong. Imagery of the products is a really strong thing to have. And I'll go through some of that in a minute as well. Just making sure that it's very clear imagery. You might want some editorial imagery done, and as well making sure that you have samples available. Generally, and making sure that you have enough samples. Buying offices are really busy. You may ask for them, you may get the samples back, but I wouldn't guarantee that you would get your samples back. So just make sure that you have, if you're going to send samples, that you are prepared not to have them back if you do need them back. And then just on sustainability side of things, understanding what your own sustainability credentials are, like how is your product made? Do you use sustainable packaging? Is it manufactured in a sustainable way? Is it sustainable fabrics? You know, what are the things that you can point to within your brand that are sustainable? Because it's such a important part for retailers at the moment. Bigger, you know, and it should be for no matter what size you are from a retailer point of view. But it's something that it has more of a focus. So if you know what your sustainable credentials are, or that you are looking to go that way, you know, you might not have recycled mailer bags yet, but you're going that way. You're going to recycle poly bags. You're using a distribution company that monitors your carbon emissions, and when you get to a certain point, they plant trees. Whatever it is, like those kind of things are important because it gives a sense of what you as a brand are about. So why should the retailer buy your products? They'll want to know that you have a credible product, so give evidence of what your product can do for them. So are you stocked in other retailers? So in their competitors, if you have any sales information that you can share in terms of, you might be one of their competitors always featured in their top 5 sales. So if those kind of things are something that you can share, then I would, because it makes you more attractive. They know that you have a successful product that's already been stocked somewhere, and that would then obviously probably work for them as well. If you've got product reviews, I would make sure, so this is all kind of leading as well to some of the things that you would put in, say, a PDF that you would make for them, that you would do for them. So if you've got product reviews, you know, I would pull 1 or 2 out from those. Sainsbury's did a really great campaign last year that they used for their POS, and I've got an image of that in a minute, but and it was an image of the product and their model wearing the product, but then it had the review from the wearer or a customer, and it really helped bring it all to life. So it's not just you talking about how fantastic your product is or your brand is, but it's got, you know, it's your retailers, it's your customers that are talking about it as well. And then, are they missing your product category in their range? So is it something that they don't do at all, that you think that there is a gap for them? If you have influencer endorsements for your products, definitely shout about those. If you're not using influencers at the moment, I would recommend that you do. There's a statistic, for every $1.20 that you spend on an influencer, you get 5 times the amount back from a marketing point of view. So make sure that you have that as part of your, this is separate to approaching retailers, but in terms of if you want to market your brand and want to sell your brand more, whether it's to retailers or to, you know, direct customers, influencer marketing is really important. And like I said, it has a very high return on its marketing spend. And then know, again, if we talked about sustainability and if your product is sustainable. And what are the buyer's pain points? What problem do you solve, and what problem does your product solve? So a buyer's main goal is they need to increase sales and their profits, and they want newness, and they need to drive additional sales that won't take away from other products that they have on the shop floor. So it's knowing all those things, and when you're pitching to them, kind of driving home the benefit that your product will bring. Obviously, their stock position, a retailer needs stock to sell. You know, they may be in a situation, if you are someone that can get them stock quickly, you might be able to use that as a hook. You know, this is available now, or when is your next gap? I can get it for you then. So it's, you know, there are times when if retailers are dealing with China, all the containers may be stuck in China and they actually physically can't get product. So they might be looking for gap fills. And then if your product goes in and does fantastic, then you could get repeats, you know? So I know it sounds really obvious, but they obviously need stock to sell it. Minimums are an important thing to talk about as well. So a lot of buyers and a lot of models that have worked are the test and repeat model, where they buy a small quantity and then repeat. So people like, and I know I'm talking from a clothing point of view, but Boohoo would generally do that. They would buy a small amount and repeat. But if you can offer a small minimum to a retailer, then for them to test it, then that's a really that's a great advantage. So make sure that you're shouting about what that minimum would be. A lot of retailers now want to do smaller buys for online orders, or they might want to have online exclusives. So you might say, I can do this product and then I can do this color for you as well. And this could be your online exclusive. And I could do less of the online exclusive. You don't need to invest in that as much from a quantity point of view than the store one, as long as you're just doing a total amount of, say, 1,000 units, 500 units, whatever it might be. The risk, so in terms of the risk of taking the decision, the risk of taking the choice, that's something that a buyer will weigh up to see, is your product worth the risk? And if you're saying to them, I can do these kind of minimums, I can help you with your online order quantities, I can get the stock to you next month, or I can get the stock, whenever you can get to the stock to them, you know, it is potentially a lower risk for them to take as a decision to stock your products. The lead times and the speed to market, it's something that, like I said, buyers want newness a lot of the time. So how quickly you can turn the product around is something that to talk about, definitely when you're talking to them. So if you can turn something around in 4 weeks, 6 weeks, 12 weeks, whatever it is, just make sure that you talk about that. Don't overpromise though. The moment you start saying, oh yeah, we can do something in 4 weeks, and it turns to 6 weeks, and then it turns to 8 weeks, you know, be realistic with what you can actually handle and manage. And again, I'm talking about sustainability again, but if you have, it's quite difficult for some buyers to find sustainable products that suit the pricing and the price range that they need to do. So again, bring that up if that's something. And then it's just that trust and showing that you are a trustworthy business and the rapport that you build with the buyers. So making sure as well, just kind of going back to LinkedIn, that if you have a LinkedIn profile, that's up to date. If you have any testimonials or that you can get on your profile to say what type of business you are, what type of business person you are, that would be something that I would invest the time in. I know when I'm looking for suppliers, branded or non-branded, I will always kind of go onto LinkedIn and check out their LinkedIn profile. And if I have, before I have meetings with people, if I don't know them, I will generally go to LinkedIn. So make sure that's just something that's up to date and that you're happy with everything that's on there and that it's, you know, representative of what you're doing. And then just talking about your presentations and what to include, whether that's a PDF that you pull together for them, which it generally would be now, because you wouldn't be going to face-to-face meetings and presenting boards. But, you know, it's about your brand and your product and your story and your why and why you're doing it. So the more that you can create a connection with the retailer and about your product and your story and your why, and Allbirds do this really well. And I've got imagery further down that will show you about that. Amazing imagery, clear product descriptions with your recommended retail prices, any press information. So if you've been featured in Grazia, if you've been featured in the Daily Mail for something, if you've been featured in Vogue or wherever you've been featured, you know, take a selection of your product, your press reviews or your press information that is suited to that retailer and put that together there. If you have a strong social media following, and again, if you've got people that are making amazing comments on that, whether it's social media or customer reviews, I would include that as well. It's such an important part now of selling a brand. And manufacturer details are factory details. So if you're not a branded product and you don't want to sell into them as a brand, but you want to sell into them and they would as own brand products, then just making sure that you have the factory details there of where the factory is based, what audits it has had, and what accreditations it has. So if it's BSCI or SEDEX or whatever it would be. Also on your presentation, I would have your delivery time, so how long it takes for you to manufacture and deliver. If you have any market research, so if you are saying, I'll talk about cosmetics, and you might say, you know, cosmetics is going to grow to X by 2023. And within that, this category, so maybe your category that you're doing is going to be the star of that growth. You know, that's something for you to shout about and say, you know, we're part of that. This is how our brand fits into this, how our product fits into that. It's in a growing market. So they're all selling techniques and just kind of persuasive information for you to say, we're in a industry that's growing, and so our brand is growing, you know, and that's information that you can get on edited.com. If you've used that before, you have to pay for some information, but you can get a lot of information for free. Business of Fashion is a subscription, and it's £21 a month, but that's very good. They run a lot of reports. Sign up to WGSN as well. You have to pay for WGSN, but you can sign up to get their free emails. And a lot of their emails that they bring out will have trend information and maybe market information. So you can take snippets from that. And but yeah, Edited, WGSN, and you know, just obviously a general search on the internet just in terms of market trends would be able to help you with that side of things. Make sure you have your costings and your retails. You might just want to put your retails on there. Potentially you would leave your costings depending on what product they were interested in. I would probably have them to hand so that you could say it's around such and such, but you might not want to put them into your presentation because you might want to use, that might be then something, you're not going to give the same cost to someone who's going to buy 3,000 units to someone who's going to buy 300. You know, so maybe don't have your costs in there, but definitely have your retails. If you have any sales information, so you might say this, maybe, you know, this product is our highest, you know, our biggest seller, and we took on our own website, it's our #1 consistently, and we take X amount a week or X amount a year, and the value of that is this. The people, you know, across our wholesale channels, it's taken this. You know, if you can get your other retail partners to share sales information with you, that's always a really valuable thing as well. And like I said, making sure that you have samples, but be prepared to not get them back. If you are in stockists in any other place, list that as well. So it's kind of like another stamp of approval. And if you've got any, if you are selling into them from an own brand perspective, that you are fully accredited, or that you're saying that the audits that the factories had. And I would just have some questions ready for them if you're, you might cover them through the conversation, but if, you know, going into the meeting and knowing what do you need to get out to the meeting from a questions point of view. Let me just scroll down a sec. I think it's not working. Hang on. Oh yeah. So this from an imagery is something just to, and when I was talking about the story, and so this is Allbirds. So straight away, you can see from Allbirds, this is like snippets from their website, but I would imagine if they were doing a PDF, they would have something that was very similar to this. They talk about their main kind of business idea is they want better things in a better way. So better design, better materials, better factories, you know, better shipping methods, and a great product. So they very much they're very much about their materials. They're a certified B Corp that's very much environmentally friendly. They have a charity link where they help communities. They use recycled packaging. They have simple designs, and you know, they say, you know, we're not about being in your face. We don't need a swoosh. We don't need 3 stripes for Adidas. We're just no flashy logos. It's all seamless. It's about the quality. It's about the design, and it's about the comfort. You know, and they have a 30-day guarantee almost, and then they talk about being made from nature. So they have a really nice story that they have pulled together, and it works really well. So I think that if you are a brand and you want to sell your own brand products to a retailer, make sure that you have something that you can really sell from it. What's your why? You know, why are you doing it? What are the things that are different about you to the rest of the market? And I'd just like to say as well, I don't know if there's questions coming in on chat. I've not answered any if there are, because I can't see it when I'm sharing the screen. So we'll do them at the end. And again, just making sure that you've got great imagery. Editorial imagery, I always think looks better than, I think you need to have a mix of both. So I think it's great to have editorial imagery, but then for your, both obviously your online and your catalogs and your website, but then also if they're going to be buying from that catalog, that you've got then very clear images that have a very clear product description, and maybe a number as well. It depends how you are logging it yourself in your own systems. Dimensions, so say if you're selling accessories and you're selling handbags, sometimes it's quite difficult from a still shot to see which is the large bag, which is the small bag. So you've got the dimensions, fabric compositions, and then you've got product references. And if you're doing something, what sizes that you go up to it. So size 6 to 20 or whatever it is. And then, like I said, from the press coverage side of things, this was the one from Sainsbury's that they had. So they had the benefits, and then this was something that at Barbara 25 said, comfy fit, stays in place, doesn't roll down, what's not to like. So if you've got things like that from your customers, include them, because it's genuine opinion and it's authentic opinion. Snippets from where you've been featured in press. It shows as well that you are active in promoting your own brand. So you're not expecting them to just sell. You're not going to go, okay, there you go, there's my brand, I don't do anything else behind the scenes. They see that you spend money on marketing. They see that you may use influencers. They see that you have a strong Instagram following. They see that you have good reviews. It's about the confidence that you are then, instilling in that retailer, in that buyer, that, yep, this is a great product to invest in, great person to invest in as well, and a great brand to have in their store or on their website. So just with the presentation and the meeting, like I said, make sure that you know your lead time. So what are your manufacturer and delivery lead times? So if they say, right, okay, I want this in February, don't overpromise. If you can't do it for February, let them know when you can do it for, and just make sure that you know your manufacturer and delivery lead times. Understanding where your market is, being clear on your recommended retails and your costings, and share any sales information that you can. Also, just on the samples, if samples come through and they are not of the quality that your production is going to be in, I know it might sound silly, but I wouldn't show them. I would just say the samples are on the way and get them the correct samples. So you might get your meeting. I'm talking worst case scenario, samples turn up and they're not right. I would either postpone the meeting or give them the option, say, I can come in and talk to you, but I don't have the samples. Like, let them know. Or would you rather wait until I have the samples? Or would you rather have the meeting when you have the samples in hand? Because they might think then if you have the meeting and you have the samples and the quality is horrendous, or you're not happy with it, then they might think that that's what your brand is about, and you don't want them to think that. So again, knowing what your minimum order quantity needs to be, and with the factories, and if they want to make any changes that are specific to them, how much do they need to buy? So if your normal minimum order quantity is 500 units, but out of that 500, your normal minimum order quantity, say with the factory, is 500 units, but out of that factory you'll sell 200 online in your own store, on your own website, and you'll sell 100 to the other retailer A, 100 to retailer B, and then you have 100 left. But if the retailer wants you to do something that's exclusive for them, then they obviously need to make sure that they're covering that total 500 minimum. Then if it's non-branded, so it's just about the testing then and the factory. So if it's just making sure as well from a safety point of view that you've done the testing that you need to do on your own products. So they might ask questions about testing. And then, like I said, have your questions ready. Then looking at the payments and the costings and the logistics side of things. So knowing what your total costs are, so take everything into account in terms of the distribution as well. What margin do you need to make? So if you're not going to make it with them, you know, you'd really kind of need to look at what would be the benefits of doing business with them. If it's something that you think, right, okay, I know if I go in with this retailer, I can start to increase my quantities, which means I'll get a better original cost price, and we'll get there in the end, then, you know, it might be worth taking a smaller hit on your margin, or the money that you would need to make. But that's only, you know, that's the decision you would have to make at the time. And what are the retailers' payment terms? So some retailers will pay you 30 days, some retailers will pay you 60 days, some retailers will pay you 120 days. It depends on the size of the retailer. And some smaller brands may pay you, some retailers may pay you upfront, and not ones that I've worked in, because I've worked in all bigger retailers. Some retailers may pay you upfront, or they may pay you a deposit, but it's something that you would need to think about. What are their payment terms? Can you handle their payment terms? And what do you need your own payment terms to be? What's their markup? You're not going to know what their markup is, but you know, I think it's generally, like I said, if you take that £10, £5, £2, 50 thing, they would generally either multiply your cost price by 2.5 or 2.8. So if you're selling at 5, they would have it at 10, or whatever your recommended retail is. How quickly will you get paid? So again, that's related to the payment terms. And then just thinking about how will you get the product to them. So some retailers have particular distribution networks that you have to use. So they'll have nominated people that you will have to use, specific cardboard boxes that you will have to use. So there's a lot of, from the logistics side of things, that you would need to understand what they do. That is generally the bigger retailers. Smaller retailers and just standalone stores would be different. And it's, so can you afford to, in terms of just kind of summing up a little bit, is can you afford to do it? Know the need that you are filling, and so sell the problem that you will fix, and be prepared and do your research for your meetings. And that is, I think, generally it. If you've got, like I said, if you've got, well, I'll have a look in a minute in terms of the chat and questions, but you can find me on Instagram at the Buyer and Retail Coach. Our website is thebuyerandretailcoach.com. And if you've got any questions that we don't get to cover today, either email me directly or just direct message me on Instagram. I'm just gonna, let me just go down here a sec and I'll stop sharing. I see there's a lot of questions, there's a couple of questions that have come through, so we'll go through those. Let me see, any questions? So usual minimum, say for a small boutique versus a department store, from Olga. So generally a small boutique would probably just they might want to buy a size set. So 2 10s, 2 8s, 2 10s, 4 12s. So they'll just buy a size set. A department store, you know, it could be a couple of hundred, you know, to try out. Or if you can say to them, I'll just do a size set for you, they might be like, right, okay, we'll try it, we'll put it on the website. But I used to work for Debenhams and on accessories, and we would buy, you know, it's hundreds to thousands to hundreds of thousands, say, then when you go to Primark. But say department store, probably, you know, you would definitely be in your, again, it depends on the department store. So if you're talking Debenhams size, I'm obviously not going to say Debenhams because they're in, you know, we don't know how long they're going to be there, if they're going to stay, if they're going to go. But that kind of size, you know, you'd be hundreds and to probably a couple of thousand, you know, 1,000. Again, it just depends on the product and depends on if they want to just trial it. They might just say, right, what's your minimum order? And Olga, what product do you do, Olga? You can come off mute. Say, Olga.
Sorry, what
product do you do? What type of product do you do?
Women's wear.
Women's wear. Okay. Yeah. So what minimum do you usually have?
Well, I sell only direct to consumer now online or through pop-ups. And like for me, I was thinking more like boutiques. So as you said, like set of sizes probably.
Yeah, I would sell them. They would generally be a size set they would have. Is there more interest in buying British made fashion due to Brexit and customer problems? Is it definitely a good thing to shout about if you have a British made brand? I saw, where's Ismay? I know I've been following you use the little boy, the blonde hair in your adverts, don't you? Is it your son, I think? I don't know if you're there, Ismay. I can see you there, but you might not want to talk, but that's okay. Yes, definitely something to shout about, Ismay. And because, you know, we don't know what the problems are going to be. There's a lot more forms that people have to fill in from a UK side of things to bring products in. But how much is a small minimum? I suppose the smallest minimum that you would have would be a size set. But, you know, 50, 100 would be, so if you think like 50 to 100, 150, something like that, that would be a small minimum. And then Ismay again, what is your opinion pitching to high-end stores such as Liberty's, knowing your product was selling at a loss, but using it to build brand awareness and prestige? I think that's just something to, like you say, it's using it for an end goal. It's what minimum would they take, and then seeing if there's a certain quantity that you can get, you know, if they're going to buy a decent amount of quantity, that you get a better cost price on your products. And I think it's a decision that you yourself would have to make, because it is a cash decision. But yes, it would build brand awareness and prestige, and it's something that you could decide then, do you know what, I'm gonna target all the Japanese stores that love British made product, and I'm gonna say we're sold in Liberties. And if that then means that you get 3 accounts in Japan or in Asia to sell a British made product at the retail prices that you want, I suppose then it's looking though at how you would then, if you've got a set retail price, what's going to change? You know, are you always going to sell to those retailers at a loss? Because unless your cost prices come down significantly or your retail prices go up, you'll always be selling at a loss to retailers, if you know what I mean, Ismay. And then, sorry, in Cervantes, could you just explain the question, the news sites? What's the question, Cervantes? I couldn't really.
I think
the slide I mentioned.
you were.
Oh yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So, edited.com is one. WGSN, like I said, business of fashion. Drapers is always good. And there's a company as well called Global Data, however you want to pronounce it. And they, you have to pay for the reports, but a lot of the time they'll give like an opening paragraph to the report, and it can contain a couple of snippets of what the market size is or what's happening within the market. So you can subscribe to them as well. And Supply Compass is another, it's not a news website, but it is a kind of, it's a sourcing website. And also Common Objective as well is another one. They're both sourcing websites, but sometimes they'll have guest speakers on, or they'll have articles that they will release, and it would have some information in there as well. Yes, there is a risk with some big brands going under that you might have not get paid once they have your goods. So this is what, in terms of, it's about you trusting them as much as they trusting you. So at the moment, there are a lot of things in flux. So, and there's a lot of retailers that are going under. So I'm actually at the moment doing a research project for Tradecraft Exchange, which is reaching out to suppliers that have had non-payment, that have had their payment extended, that have had their goods cancelled. So it would generally be, unless, if they go under, you might not get your goods, you might not get paid for your goods, or you might just get a small percentage of what the cost price is. Or they might just cancel your goods. So you might have an order of 1,000 units about to go to them, and they might just say, we're closing, we don't want it, we don't need it. So that's what, choose your partner, your retail partners carefully. And I know nobody has a crystal ball, but you know, you can do credit checks on people, you can get credit insurance on retailers. So that's just something to look at as well, in terms of there aren't a lot of retailers out there at the moment, big retailers, that people will give credit insurance on, or it's changing all the time. So just have a look into that side of things. And then let me see if there's anything else. No camera, no mic. Do department stores provide supplier manuals? If so, which departments do I ask for? So from Jacqueline, if you are going to if you're going to supply a retailer, they will have a supplier manual that they will give you, generally as when you're being onboarded to their system. So you would ask their sourcing team if their buying team doesn't give it to you. And that would have everything on it, from how you, what boxes you need to, generally if it's a big enough, I'm thinking of when I was at Debenhams, the boxes that you need to use, the delivery date that the deliveries, the days that they need to ship, generally if it's from the Far East, all the logistics contacts. So that would be everything. So it'd be the sourcing department that would give it to you. If they don't, some businesses don't have a sourcing department, so then it would be the buying team. So you just ask for a supplier manual when you're when you're speaking to them. And then just Jacqueline says, I'm not sure you can get credit insurance yet at the moment. It's probably quite unlikely on some things, on some retailers, that you get credit insurance, but it's something to look at anyway. And let me think, in terms of the credit insurance, what is the percentage big retailers normally ask for? So depending on the product type, so a retailer knows that if you're talking, Vivian, you're talking selling them branded product or own brand? So
sorry, own brand product. Thanks, Nicole.
Okay. So generally a retailer knows that they will get less of a margin from a own brand. So you're selling your brand to them. That's what you want to do. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So they know that they will get less of a margin from a own brand product, or sorry, I'll call it a branded product, than a product that has their name, their branding on it. And it would be,
I was asking for example, home fragrance candles.
So, I would probably say about 50%, because 50, on own brand, depending on their sources. I bought home fragrance for Primark, and we would probably get about 60% margin.
Okay.
So depending on the product, but then there's some products that we've got a lot less. So, I think that go in with what you need and then have the conversation.
Yeah.
That's what I would generally do with it.
Thanks, Nicole. Appreciate it.
And then, so it's may apply to a pop-up in John Lewis, and they state that I must have enough stock for a week, but I have no idea of how much that would be. So I would ask them for if they have the sales of another brand in that particular. So is it? I would imagine it's probably just in. Obviously, it's one of the John Lewis's. So I would ask that particular John Lewis that you are going to be selling in, if they have the stock figures or the sales figures that they for another brand that they could share with you. So if there's a brand, so say if there was another children's wear brand and they sold 500 units in a week, and you could find out what their best sellers are, then you'd be able to get a judge. So it's whether they would share that with you or not. But I would just ask, I think you just say, be honest with them and say, I don't know what what your traffic is like in that store. Can you share with me, what kind of units the other brands that have had that space, that have either been similar to you or that have had that space, depending on what kind of brand they are, and what kind of units they sold. And then maybe you could say, right, okay, they sold 500 units in a week. I know my best-selling category is trousers. Then my next best-selling category is sweatshirts. So then I would kind of split it into, right, okay, I know I'm going to have 30% of that 500 is going to be trousers. then 40% of it is going to be trousers, 30% of it is going to be t-shirts, and whatever the other percent is going to be divided along the other categories that I have. So I would just ask them I would just see what sales information they'd be able to share. Then let me see what I got. Do you feel approaching online retailers? Let me just see. So Monisha, do you feel approaching online retailers such as Mr. Porter, Matches Fashion, etc. the way forward? Depends on what your brand is, Monisha. I think that if it suits their aesthetic, and if you feel that there's a gap for it, if it's a way forward for your brand and your product, then they would be the ones that I would target. But if you have a product that is not as maybe fashion forward or not as different, then it might not be the right one for you. Just because they might be secure, they might not be a fit from a product point of view or a customer point of view. That's what you need to look at as well. Does anyone know the losses from Jacqueline incurred by big department stores such as John Lewis and Liberty's? No, but you can find that kind of thing online. If they're a public limited company, you'll be able to find that online. But you know, and John Lewis posts them. Liberty's, I think, might be private. I'm not 100% sure, but I would generally, the only people that have made any money this year, Amazon, probably ASOS, Boohoo, and the online young fashion in the UK, the kind of online young fashion retailers, I would say, and food retailers, the people that have a food element within there, so supermarkets, so people like Asda, you know, because where they've lost, they will have gained in other areas. And yes, Vivian, in terms of, do I see a bigger trend to go online for retailers? Yes, it's a massive, like I said, in terms of the way Nike have done, they've achieved their sales, their planned sales that they were going for. They didn't expect to reach them until 2022. They reached them in 2019. The whole online, COVID has really accelerated the process. So, and you know, research has shown that they aren't just stopping going online to then go shop in a bricks and mortar store when the shops are open. They are continuing to shop online. So I would definitely invest heavily in your online presence and really look at those retailers that are online as well. So Wolf and Badger is one. They don't have stores. They have online stores. You know, have a look at those that just have an online presence, because they don't have the overheads of the bricks and mortar store, but also they're less susceptible to the ups and downs of the closures from COVID as well. So, but yeah, I think that in that table that I showed earlier on, I think it was like retail was out of all of them, it was like 30% of executives said that was one of the biggest growth areas. And then here we go. Normally, so from a phone, I can't see who it's from. It doesn't have the name, it just says Hawaii. So normally how long it takes for the retailer to list the product in store online if the buyer decides to go ahead with the product. If it is, it can really depend on the retailer. So, and how fast that retailer usually works and the processes that retailer has to go through. So I, like I said, worked for and if you're talking as a person talking about selling their brand in on the phone, it's the Hawaii P330 Pro. If it's your own brand, there's less hoops to go through. So if you want to sell them your brand and they're not putting their brand on it, there's less hoops to go through. So it is a quicker process, but it will just depend. It'd be one of the questions to ask in your meeting, because I know I worked for a retailer, and they had to get the audits. They still had to do audits of the facility. They still had to do, they have to do all the finance checks to make sure that you're a credible business. So they did finance checks on the suppliers as well to make sure that you weren't going to go bust and that you would be able to provide the product that you said you were going to provide. But I know I was I left the department to move on to another department, and 6 months later that product still wasn't on the website. But if you're talking about when I worked for Primark, it was very quick, and it, you know, you were there within a couple of weeks. So it is very different depending on the retailer and what systems they have in place and the hoops that you need to go through with it. And let's see. Can today's presentation skills apply to consumer? Yeah, anything. You know, I think that it's about linking to what's the gap you fill, Cervantes. You know, what's the gap you fill? What's the need they have? What's your pricing? You know, the reviews of your product, the photography that you have. A bit different on electronic product. I don't know how sexy you can make a hairdryer look, but you might do some nice editorial or whatever. But you know, it definitely does. Let me see. And then from Jacqueline, I'm aware any imports from EU can't claim back the 20% VAT unless they're a big company. This means that my costs are 20% more expensive. How are the brands and big retailers managing this? Is it better to be non-registered for VAT? I would have to throw that question out to the room in terms of being VAT registered and not VAT registered. If anyone has any thoughts or opinions on that, if they could let Jacqueline know further down in the chat, or anyone in terms of a good place to go from a website to look at or someone to contact, because it's not my area of expertise in terms of, I think what you need to just make sure is that your products are retail at the right price for your market and for your product type. So in terms of where they sit within the competition. And then in respect to product testing, who typically pays for these? Who do you get these details from? Products sold on Amazon do not require this expense. So no, this was more about if you're selling own brand product, so not your brand, but if you wanted to sell, so if you were a supplier and you want to sell product to Primark, but it's going to be Primark branded, then you would they would have specific tests that would need to be done on the product, and that would all be in the cost price. Generally, the cost price would cover those costs. And then in terms of, and then it's down to you, but I would imagine, I know for my own, if you were selling your own brand children's wear product, I would imagine that you have done some kinds of testing to make sure that it's safe to sell, because, you know, if there's any lawsuits down the line or something like that, that you would you'd have evidence to show that you've done the testing. So it's just something to it depends on your product as well. There's some you know, it's like, is it color fast? So if you're selling a t-shirt and you are going to wash it and all the color runs out, you're going to get a return. You know, if all your zips are faulty, you're going to get product returned. So you know, it's speaking to your suppliers and making sure that they're using high quality goods. What are they doing? Batch testing on their products, on their fabrics. So it's probably something that you need to speak to your own suppliers to find out what kind of product testing that they're doing. I think so. Do you see a trend of live streaming as a way of marketing? Yes, I do see a trend of live streaming as a way of marketing. I think if you definitely look to, if you look again at that, there's a podcast and a website, The Retail Profit, and they were talking about, and Business of Fashion as well, they do a lot of podcasts. They were talking about live streaming, but definitely I think anything that China does will end up here. And see Cervantes is laughing, but anything that China does will end up here. So look to them in terms of what they're doing as well. So that's, but yes, I do think, because everything's moving to more video, and it's TikTok, it's Reels, it's, you know, Instagram, everybody's buying on their phone. So yeah, definitely something to look at.
Thanks, Nicole.
Okay, you're welcome. And then Jessie, has any retailer positively promoted live stream shopping in the UK? It's quite popular in Asia. I've not seen it in the UK. I've not seen it in the UK yet. So unless if anybody else has, please shout up. But I've not seen it in the UK yet, but definitely something to be thinking about and watch. And then from Jacqueline, John Lewis requires extensive testing, difficult with supply chain upheaval. It is, but I suppose if it's a requirement that they have, you know, it's something that you're going to have to fulfill. So yeah, okay, so I see that these are our last questions, and that's fine. But yeah, it's something that if that's one of their requirements, it's something that you have to fulfill. You've got if there's something that you want to test in the UK, SGS and ITS have offices in the UK. So it's something that if you're struggling to test something in China, or wherever your product is made, sorry, I don't mean to make any presumptions, you could get it tested locally. But again, it is an expense, so it's making sure that you're going to get those expenses covered from the sales, or that, you know, going forward, that long term it's going to be covered. So yeah, Savante is saying, is that to do with the live streaming? Savante is in LA. Yeah, so Savante said, I'm Chinese in Los Angeles, and you see the similar trend in Los Angeles. Social commerce is coming from China to the US now. So yeah, so there. Right, if anyone thinks of any questions or didn't want to ask any questions in the chat, like I said, just send me a direct message. I really enjoyed talking to you today, and I hope you found what I went through useful.
Cool. Well, thank you so much, Nicole. And I think, you know, incredible to see so many questions. So thank you everyone for sending those in. Sorry to cut it short there. I feel like there was definitely a lot more questions that could have been coming in there. So yeah, do please reach out to Nicole for anything else, or if you would like to get in touch via myself, you have received an email from me. But yeah, it's the buying and retail expert. Is that it?
Buyer and retail coach. So actually on
retail coach.
on my website there is a kind of condensed version of the slides that you can just download. But if you want this specific one, just email me and I will send it on to you. But yeah, thanks very much everybody. Have a lovely evening. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks for tuning in. Bye.